I don't really know what to say from now on. I'd just like to pay tribute to all these blokes down here, how hard we've worked over the last 10 months. To think back to January and all the hard work we did then, it's all come good now. I think we deserved it, don't you? Thanks very much to Jack Cole, he's done a great job. Jack's done a great job this year. There's a lot of other people that should be thanked, all these blokes around here, all the administration of the club, all you supporters, stay with us all thick and thin. A fantastic lot of you. Thank you.
Since going to centre and playing as a follower, he's had a good year.
Dennis Russell finds Chick Whitten. He certainly provided some bite around the field since coming onto the ground in that third term. He's looking for Alan Stringer. Oh, Martin Leslie just nudged Stringer underneath the football. I don't think I've seen Leslie beaten this season.
I've got some stuff here, Martin, of you. You started at Port Adelaide in 1978.
Correct.
And I've got some. I forgot I had these, but I've got these bloody books going back to the 60s. But well, 78's your first year, and it has all the team photos of the A's down through to the under 17s.
Yeah, okay.
And you're playing with the likes of Craig Bradley and Bruce Abernethy and.
Yep.
And he found the football. Martin Leslie, Greg Boyd. Hines does the shepherding. Boyd comes inside, then back towards Abernathy, who kicks out wide, looking for Stephen Williams.
But yeah, players like him and Rossi Aegis.
Yep.
We sort of all played in the same era. Same with Tony Antrobus and David Robertson.
Yep.
They were actually in the Port zone then because they were at Ingle Farm.
Yep. Now they find their way to North Adelaide.
Yeah, because the zones changed.
Zones changed. Yeah, right.
So we lost, I think, Ingle Farm or whatever went to North Adelaide. I think. Yeah, at some stage. Yeah.
Yep. Well, just on that with the zoning, like obviously Port Adelaide benefited very well from the Eyre Peninsula.
Yeah.
And I've got some names here like from EP that. You know, some you played league football with, some you played your underage stuff with under 17s, under 19s and even reserves, but Greg Phillips, Danny Hughes, Brenton Cole.
Carey from behind couldn't take it. In there is Leslie, the back door was Fiachi. So the Magpies have a little bit of space as the ball comes out towards Greg Phillips and he pinpoints Marnie.
Colin Whitehead, Gavin Stringer, Tim Zwar, the Harvey boys.
Hines to Leslie. Opens it up to Brown, flanked now by Foster, running through half forward, looking for Marnie. The ball too high. Back goes Salisbury for Glenelg. Marnie tackles Brown, drives towards the goal square. Grenville gets back there for Glenelg. Oh, it's gone out! Oh, what a magnificent off-break!
Tony Marr.
Yep.
Jeff Phelps, Darryl Borlays, Darren Smith.
Hodgman off the side of the boot. Not a good kick from an experienced player. Martin Leslie held under it very, very strong indeed. Slips it wide, here's trouble. Hines covers up nicely for him. Fiachi with Cruz chasing. Fiachi too nippy. Port Adelaide over centre wing. Up high Darren Smith. Good spoil Seaburn.
Glenn Kelch, big Glenn Kelch from Wirrala.
Yeah.
The Kemp boys from Waybacks.
Yep.
And Holman boys from Lock. So there's a lot of players there that you went through the underage stuff with, but then obviously household names now: Greg Phillips, Danny Hughes, Brenton Cole, Jeff Phelps played in Premierships, Darren Smith.
Imagine the amount of players that came from the EP that didn't actually want to stay.
Yeah.
And that happened a lot too.
Yeah. And the ones I mentioned there, they're just the ones that you played with.
That's right.
After you left, it was just like...
Tony Hannon, was he from...
Yeah, from Kimber.
Kimber.
Yep, a name that I probably didn't mention. I'm not sure whether you play with him or not, but...
I was playing reserves, I think. That's the interesting part about that era is that Port won 79, 80 and 81. So I broke into the team in 81.
Yep.
It wasn't an easy team to break into.
No.
Because they'd won 3 or 2 in a row and going for their third.
Yep.
And I was the 21st man of the, because they only had 2 reserves in those days.
Yep, in 81.
I was the 21st man in the 81 flag.
I was going to ask you about that because I reckon it was maybe Peter Hoffner or somebody, the regular fullback.
Trevor Sorrell.
Trevor Sorrell. He broke down with injury, so obviously not available for the grand final.
Yeah.
Was there any chance that you might have been the replacement?
Oh, I was close with Hoffner. It was
Yep.
more of the half-back flank because Greg was centre-half back then.
Yep.
And the games I played I only played 4 in the first year, were in the back pocket.
Yep.
So
wasn't going to be a like-for-like swap, but they could have reshuffled so that you.
Yeah. And look, I'm thinking I was 50-50 to get in.
Yep.
And I think because Hoffy had played, I think he was the guy who maybe took the place. I think. And he had played 100 games or whatever, so they just went for the
More experience.
More experience, yeah.
Your turn would have come the following year, but unfortunately Port didn't.
Yeah.
They bowed out. So I'll just.
Yeah. Well, I actually the following year I played in the second semi-final, and it wasn't a great memory because I'd had a
Depressed fracture of the cheekbone. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but I actually had a broken bone in my foot, which I'd had sort of all year, and it got to the stages, and my feet were terrible. I probably had 10 operations on my feet, but the sesamoid bone in both feet, that one there, just got smashed, and so they had to remove both of them. But in that game, I had a needle in my foot to deaden the pain.
Deaden the pain.
Well, then the problem is you can't feel your foot. I was so embarrassed.
So kicking becomes problematic.
Well, yeah, it was embarrassing because when you can't, it's hard to talk about it, try to relate it to you, but you can't feel your foot. You're not even running properly. And there was once I kicked the ball in that second semi-final. I just kicked the ground.
Yeah.
So in a way, I was just dead set glad that I got my cheekbone broken.
Yeah, right, fair enough.
Yeah, so Greg Turnbull did that.
Yeah, okay. That's from Norwood.
And I saw it on video on the Monday night, and these days he would have got 8 games, but he got off. Didn't even get reported.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, you got you were named the most improved player for your first year or first full year of senior football, so that would have been.
Yeah, I got 5th best and fairest.
Yep, 5th in the best and fairest.
In 82, yeah.
Yep. But at the end of that season, John Cale was appointed Collingwood coach, so obviously you would have been coached for him for a couple of years, and probably even when you're playing resis, and there would have been some sort of training, I suppose, even through the underage, or were they separate?
I was pretty much training with the A grade for most of the 81 season. And even sometimes in the 1980, I played a reserves game in 1980 and I actually played really well. And so they were talking to me about, you're going to get close. But I ended up playing every game in reserves. We won the grand final. We're actually 7 goals down at 3/4 time and won the grand final against the Bays.
Yep.
David Grange might have had something to do with us winning.
Yeah, I've actually gone through, in one way or another, whether it be kicking goals or taking people out. But I do have the lineup of that. I think Andy Portpleasure and guys like that played as well. And you're right. You were 7 goal down and held them to a point in the last, and you guys kicked 10 goals. It's a pretty amazing win.
42 points. Yeah, what's that? 7 goals. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and at 3/4 time, the Glenelg players were coming off. They were just giving it to us.
Yep.
So they certainly got it back.
Yeah. And was there wind in that last quarter, or just?
I think there might have been a bit of a breeze.
Yeah, I definitely remember the.
Certainly not as much as what 7 goals would.
No.
But there was a breeze, I reckon.
Yeah, because I remember the league match. I think Port bet Nord, and there was definitely wind favouring one end. So
one of the better games I've ever seen. That league grand final.
Oh, that was awesome. I did.
Tough, hard.
Yep.
Yeah, really good game of footy because there wasn't much between them all day.
No,
yeah.
And once again, probably Port go in as underdogs as they normally did in grand finals, but that was a win for the ages.
Yeah.
1983, you're an established player by then. Russell Ebert's coaching, but they finished 6th.
Yeah, well, only played 2 games that year.
With injury, with broken foot injury, or?
Well, the other one went.
Oh, okay.
So I was in plaster most of that year, and pretty much to the point where, and my dad was just saying, just give it away.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, I was, I couldn't wear normal boots. Like if, just say if it was a wet day.
Yep.
I couldn't wear screw-ins. I wouldn't last 3
As they were back in there, moulded soles were.
Yeah, and moulded soles even. So what I ended up doing by, say, the mid-'80s was playing in AstroTurf boots. They were very cheap. They're only like Puma made them, and they're only $50.
Yeah.
Compared to most boots, probably then were 120.
Okay.
And I used to go through about 6 pairs a year, but they had bendable rubber, bendable sort of sprigs, like soft rubber.
Yep.
And that was the only way. And I remember actually wearing them, played my first state game in '84, which was a dewy night, no wind, at Footy Park, and Neil Curley was the coach. And he said to me in the warm-up, he said, "Are they your warm-up boots?" I said, "No, I'm playing with them." And he's just going, "No, you're fucking not."
Yeah, really?
And I said, "Mate, I've got no choice."
Got no choice otherwise.
And so what I had to do a lot of times was when it was, I didn't mind playing on grounds that had a bit of give in it, but if they were slippery, I just had to try to, keep my feet. Russell used to say, you're losing your feet a bit. I said, yeah, that's the story. But I sort of got better at that,
Yep.
Not to try to, turn on a 2-bob watch. Otherwise, I'd go arse over tit.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned Russell Ebert. How did you find the transition? Obviously a legend of the club taking over from another legend in John Cale. Were they sort of similar coaching styles or?
No. John's coaching style, he was easy to be under because he liked a bit of banter, but as soon as he got on the footy field, it was the banter was over.
Yep.
Like it's pretty good with he said I was the worst dressed bloke he'd ever seen in my life, in his life, and and I just say give him something back, and
yep.
And that was the sort of relationship he had with a lot of players, and so it was pretty easy. Russell was obviously. I think the one thing, and I don't blame Russell for this, that because he was so good, and he only missed probably 6 or 7 games in his whole career at Port Adelaide.
Very durable.
He certainly looked after himself pretty well, but he expected everyone to be similar.
Yep.
And he couldn't work out why.
Yeah, gotcha.
So here's me like chalky bones, pretty much. I hardly ever pulled a muscle, but I broke shitloads of bones.
Yeah.
And so we had a good relationship. Russell, had a fair bit of time for me. But I found that Russell just sort of, was expected more out of everyone because and I found that coaching in the country, and my expectations were way over. My patience wasn't great, so I think Russell's was a bit the same.
Yeah, and of course he's playing coach, so he could lead by example, and he'd expect everybody to have those standards that he had, whether it be training, playing, whatever.
Yeah,
right through. So
that's right, and there's nothing wrong with that. Just little things you learn from guys like that.
Yep, their professionalism and
if you do a lap and you run inside the line, you just said, "What are you doing?
You're cheating."
Yeah, you're cheating.
Yep.
And, so everything that you did was pretty much the way he wanted it to go, and Jack was similar, but they were different. They were, I think Jack could relate to players better.
Yep.
Probably one-on-one.
Yeah. Okay.
Where Russell was, probably realised that early in his career as a coach, probably, something he had to work on.
Yep.
But he was, let's face it, we lost that '84 grand final, and that was the one that we shouldn't have lost.
Oh yeah, well I'm an unabashed Port Adelaide fan, and it's sort of one that sticks in my memory that we should have won, but
yeah.
4 players reported in yesterday's torrid grand final between Port and Norwood.
The grand final action started before the first bounce, with Port full forward Tim Evans and Norwood's Craig Barham leading the way. Evans was reported by the goal umpire for allegedly striking Barham. Then, after the first bounce, most of the other players on the field decided to get into the act.
The umpires
Port's Martin Leslie was booked for allegedly striking an unnamed Norwood player when this brawl broke out. And to complete a disastrous quarter for the Magpies, centre-half forward Dwayne Russell was reported by 3 umpires for unduly rough play after Evans had taken a mark on the goal square under strong pressure from Baum. Then it was the Redlegs' turn to get on the wrong side of the umps. Bruce Winter was reported by both field umpires for allegedly charging Russell. The tribunal will hear the charges on Thursday night.
And Nord, you know, obviously kudos to them. They create history coming from 5th and probably a grand final they shouldn't have won, but they did.
Yeah, well, they sort of went out there to try and rough us up, which we didn't mind. But we were we came back at them.
Yeah.
They're the ones that got caught.
Well, funny you should mention that. It's a good segue into, you know, talking about the skirmish between Timmy Evans and Craig Baum.
For the Magpies. Wide, experienced Belton. The left footer. Is this the answering goal? Here are the two that had a battle before the siren, and there it is, it's still on. Knight versus Baum, but it's Evans' ball. And look at Dwayne Russell, looks to have his number taken.
Do you know the real story? What, did they go to shake hands?
Oh, yeah. Well,
offered his hand and Tim Evans pushed him away?
Back in the days where we actually sang the
national anthem before the game.
But we were all in our positions.
Yep.
And so then down the other end, you know, that was going on. So I didn't really, you know, see much of it. But the whole thing was Ian. I know a couple of Norwood people. So Ian Stazanowski was assistant coach, I think.
Yep.
And they come up with a bit of a plan. They thought they could probably upset Tim, and you know, that was what they tried to do.
Yep.
And you know, I think there was a little bit of angst right at the start. I think I got reported in that first quarter, not for anything major. I got off anyway, but we end up. They instigated. We end up coming back and a lot of frees. We gave them a lot of frees that they shouldn't have. You know, that we shouldn't have given. And you look at I've only looked at the replay once and I couldn't watch it again.
Yeah, it would be hard to.
God's truth, you know, like the amount of times we just gave the ball back to them.
It'll be Hall and Kennedy once more, trying to work through there, getting the free kick. It's Leslie for Port Adelaide. He's quick to move it as he uses the run of Gill. Good pass looking for Anderson, almost up to half forward. And the youngster, wingman for Port, showing early signs of form, fires it high and long. Through the half-forward area, Kenner in from the side, Evans. Russell, good.
Well, the last time that Baum stood Evans, he allowed Evans only 1 mark for the day. Big Tim has 2 to his credit already, although he has not scored.
123 goals for the year, Tim Evans. And the Cardinals Centre Football committed. Scanlon. Back for Baum. Evans charges. And the ball goes off. Evans out of play for a throw in the left forward pocket. And again we're on.
Well, there can be no misunderstanding. There's a personal war between Craig Baum and Tim Evans.
So that was pretty hard to take. That same year, you signed a Form 4 for Fitzroy.
Yep.
Geez,
you got your information, haven't you?
Yeah, I got the information.
That's why I'm just going to let him go.
And of course, back then the Form 4 would tie you to that club for 3 years, I think. So and you probably had no intentions to go, or correct me if I'm wrong, you probably didn't have an intention going over there that early, but if you did, you would have been tied to Fitzroy.
The whole thing is that if I had the time again, I would have liked to finish my career at Port.
Yep.
But see, I ended up playing my first AFL game at 26 years of age.
Yep.
So that wasn't probably going to happen.
Turner missed the mark. He's played well though. Gets a quick kick at the ball from a standing start, and Leslie again. Right at the centre circle, a play on call, and Kennedy does just that. Not a great kick off the boot. Gafer in front, despite the fact that he slipped over. Hardy couldn't do anything with it. Thrown out by Morwood to Kerrison. Beautifully done by Shane Kerrison, and the Collingwood back pocket player gets on his bike, goes long down the ground, up the half forward. Krasiska traps it almost. Leslie looking for the free kick. Back up support from Zanotti. Gets grabbed high. Campbell's there. Dacos farms out the hand pass to Banks, who has a shot at goal and hits the post. Great stuff by Gavin Krasiska. He's played well, hasn't he? One behind, 13-15 to 9-11.
Once again, though, the handball
of the Brisbane Bears coming unstuck out of the back line. Mark Zanotti took it rather a little casually when he went to take the ball and didn't take it cleanly and allowed Collingwood in.
Kennedy gave it to Campbell, who boots it around the outer side but gives it away. The mark is taken by Darren Mullane, one of the best men on the ground. He goes in short. Krasiska again, bobbing up between the lines, under pressure, gets the kick off. Martin Leslie had a wonderful game. To Campbell, to Bain.
I was real keen to go in about 1985, but I was also having troubles with my body as well.
Yeah.
So I had, you know, there was a while there I had, you know, I had a full year in 1981 where I won the reserves best and fairest and played a few league games. 82 I had a full year. 83 I played 2 games. I was out for pretty much the whole year.
Yep.
84 I had a full season, played 26 or 4 games or whatever. 85 I missed about 10 from a shoulder. 85 I missed the last 8 games. I had a broken foot. This time it was that bone that goes from your ankle down to your 5th metatarsal, which is your little pinky toe. Now that just pulled off. Well, that pulled off in February. So Russell said to me, he said, how do you reckon? I just said, well, you know, I'm going to be in plaster for 10 weeks if I have it done.
Yeah.
So I played all of 85, and it was most disappointing year because I couldn't turn.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember standing Malcolm Blight there one day, and I'd played on Blighty before in 84 and probably played my best game I had for 3 or 4 years. And I played him on again in 85, and if you remember, Malcolm Blight could turn on a 2-bob watch, and he had a 50, 60 metre kick on both feet. Made me look like an idiot, and I couldn't do anything because I couldn't turn, and it was really frustrating, you know. So by round 14 or 15, I just said to Russell, I said, mate, I'm not enjoying the footy, and I'm just going to get this done.
Yeah.
So I went in and they put a screw in the foot, and missed the last sort of, I don't know, 8 or 9 games, I suppose, of 85.
I think you went up and played Waratahs that year.
86.
86 was it?
Yeah, so the next year I had a full season, lucky enough to win the best and fairest. 87 I missed another 8 games with the shoulder. So it was just like,
it's quite amazing that you rack up 150 games in 8 years that you're at Port Adelaide. But I guess you have Escort Cup matches, Port Adelaide.
Pretty much. Yeah, a lot of times I didn't play too many Escort Cup games because I was usually trying to nurse something to get myself right.
Yeah, right.
Because most years I had an operation.
That's what he does for a living, fell trees.
This is McGuan, centre wing, towards half forward. Leslie goes back. I've really admired his game. Strong mark, plays on, chip pass across the ground.
You know, and so, you know, just going quickly forward was, when I retired from footy, I didn't go near a ground for about 8 years.
Yeah, okay.
I had enough.
Tony Shaw it was, having a great game. Put McIver out of business in the first half. Gastev, great mark. Showed tremendous skill. It was Leslie that took the mark, tremendous skill.
Similar in Brisbane, I played a full season, then I'd be stuffed. You know, so 7 years there, you'd expect to play 140 games. Well, I played just over 100, 107 or something like that. So, you know, I just mentally cooked and physically cooked.
Yep.
And my back was gone in the last year I played at Brisbane. And, had that operated on, two lower discs. And, you know, just thought, I'm just sick of being in hospital.
Well, you did pretty well. Like, you had battered your body up, and to you know, with the 2 clubs that you played for, to get over 250 games, it's fair effort, really.
Yeah.
How old were you when you started footy?
A grade.
No, when you started playing footy.
Oh, 7 years old.
With?
Taparoo.
Oh, with Taparoo.
Yeah. I only lived probably half a K away from the ground. But you know how many kicks I got my first year? I played under 11s and I was 7. I got 2 kicks for the season. So I ended up going to Ethelton thinking I might get a kick up there. You know? When I was...
Because I was going to say Ethelton is obviously a little bit further away and maybe a train trip.
Yeah, Ethelton
had to be a reason.
Sort of 5 or 6 Ks away from where I lived. But my next door neighbour went to Ethelton and I said, yeah, I'll come and see if I can get a kick there because I was that small, they just pushed me out of the way. So, you know, if you imagine a 7-year-old playing against a 10 or 11-year-old, that's what happens. Similar happens up in the country.
Yeah. 86, you do a pre-season with Fitzroy. having signed that Form 4?
Didn't do, no. So 86, I went to train with Fitzroy.
Yeah.
But because Peter Jess was my manager then, so Peter Jess was the big, he probably managed about 100 people. He's the one that's right against this, the concussion in the head stuff over in Victoria, so he's like, managing all these people to, try and get some money back and that sort of thing. So Peter it was all about the money, and I was all about just playing. Back in those days, I didn't give a really rat's ass about the money. I just wanted to play in a good team type of thing. So I went to Fitzroy, and because I'd missed a lot of 85, I think they were going, and they were struggling. Like they only paid at that stage. It was the end of the season of 85.
Still trying
start of 86, and they'd only paid 3 players.
Yeah, most of the players were waiting for the match payments for the previous.
Roos, Pert and Osmond were the only players paid, and they said to me, we can't afford, to pay Port, and we can't do this, and and this is exactly what happened. Arthur Wilson was the CEO or whatever he was. And he said, look, we'll just let you go. If any other team wants to take you on, you can go and train with them and see how you go. Well, I just go, no, fair enough. All right. So I went home, and Essendon rang us up, and I signed a contract with Essendon and trained with them for a week. And then Fitzroy said, no, well, give us 200 grand. You can have it.
200.
So I actually took Fitzroy to court. Through Peter Jess. He said, well, that's a strain of trade, Martin. He said, they're telling you to do one thing, and then they're stopping you from pursuing your trade. And so I took him to court, and who took over who's the guy who's now president of Collingwood? He was a lawyer. Anyway.
So he was involved with this?
He was a lawyer then. Yeah. But he was working for the league.
Okay.
He ended up being my lawyer, which and the league didn't want Fitzroy to go.
No.
It was just, so I ended up getting 20 grand out of it, and it cost me 25,000.
Yeah, I remember the story. Yeah.
So just stiffed, and but anyway, so that's what happened then. And by that time, I just got a bit sick and tired of all this bullshit, so I just went back and signed another couple of years at Port Adelaide, which took me through to the end of 88.
Yep, and you played up and down that year at Waratahs?
End of 86, yeah.
Yep, and you're up there when the Brisbane Bears drafted you?
Yes. Yeah, they rang me up and I told them, I said, you might be wasting your time because I just signed a contract with Port Adelaide. And obviously knowing that Victorians, the way they probably think about South Australia, clubs like, we'll get you out of that, mate, that's the least.
There'll be a loophole. We'll get you.
Yeah, and I just said I don't think so. Bob McLean was still the main man.
Yep.
And that just didn't happen. They came over to Port Adelaide, and Port just said, "There's the door. Fuck off."
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and that was pretty much. I knew that would happen.
Yep.
But anyway, my third after we won the '88 grand final, and I just thought I've just got to go. It was nice and comfortable at Port Adelaide playing in a really good side, but I wanted to play against the best players every week.
Yeah.
And, that's what anyone wants to do, don't they? I would think, But I just probably wish a team a bit higher up the ladder might have drafted me.
Yeah.
I think everyone in Australia felt that for you.
A bit like when Buckley went there, I suppose. He was probably...
Correct weight.
Mind you, if he had stayed there, he would have been a...
That's right.
3 or 4 time
Funnily
premiership.
enough, the funny story with that one is that when Bucks first came over, because I was ex-Port Adelaide obviously, and so was he, so, I sort of, got to know him a little bit in the early days and, and asked him, and he basically said to me, he said, look, I'm only going to play the 1 year here, I'm going to Collingwood, I'm just like, going, at least suss it out and, see how you go. He's only just arrived. So in the early days, obviously I didn't play the first 2 years of Brisbane, but we hadn't beaten Collingwood. The very first time Bucks played against us, we beat them.
Beautiful.
1993.
Yeah.
94.
94.
But yeah, so that was ironical, because Bucks was obviously a great footballer. Back in early days, I think he'd probably admit he was probably a little bit immature, probably thinking he was, feg jam.
Bit ahead of himself.
Yeah, but, obviously, end up being a great player. But, first time he played against us, we told him about it too.
Yeah, you would have.
Let him know all about it. I just go back to 87, it's a pretty good year. Port end the minor round in second spot, but they bow out in the finals. But the other good thing about 87 was South Australia beating Victoria again.
I was there. It was great, throwing pies at Dermot Brereton, but sorry, go on.
Yeah, so that was a highlight of probably that year. Unfortunately, as I say, Port bow out of the finals, going out in straight sets, I think. But also, Ebert, the jungle drums are beating, and Ebert's position's probably under some threat. And as it turns out, I think John Carl was coaching Westies at the time, and it was going to be the obvious swap. So Russell Ebert ultimately gets sacked, and John Cale is his replacement. What was the feeling amongst the group? Was it not a revolt because John Cale, the legend's coming back, but was there some sort of empathy for Russell's position?
Oh, no doubt. It was pretty tough, because I think that we bowed out. Glenelg beat us by a point.
Yep.
In
2
that
points.
last 2 points, was it?
Yep.
And we hit the post 5 times.
Yeah.
And we had, another one that sort of, really disappointing. And I remember Russell's interview after that game, and it was because, whoever was interviewing him said, it was bloody bad luck. And he says, because Russell could be a bit sarcastic, He said, the sun still comes up tomorrow, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And he's had this face, it's like, yeah. And
But he's only half convinced the sun's going to come up tomorrow.
so it was just, you felt for him, and still felt for him when, when he left. I just think that probably, if you look at sort of history, I suppose that, he had a 5-year contract, and I know he was disappointed, but it's not as though they just didn't renew his contract. And that was, it was over type of thing. So, we had our opportunities under Russell, and no one's fault. It just didn't work.
Just didn't pan out.
Jack came in, had a pretty good side. That side was getting better. 88 was probably the best team I've ever played with.
Yep.
Played in, and
half-back line of Greg Phillips, Abernathy, and
apart from saying state footy, type of thing, but.
That would have been the state line-up at the time, probably.
Well, it was probably close, yeah. But yeah, we just sort of worked well together. The whole back line did. Yeah, they also had ball getters. We had in '88. I just think we had really good footballers, but also a fairly tough side as well. We didn't have any. If you were going to play against us, I don't think we had too many weaknesses.
Sturt actually knocked you off by 1 point in the last minor round game of the year.
Not the last minor round game, but I do remember that game.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Sturt weren't too bad.
They played out of the skin, yeah.
Yeah, they did. And but we got the Andrew Hobbses, we had the Wayne Marnies with a bit of toughness, and David Brown. They're bloody good footballers.
Well, you probably wouldn't get a game for Port Adelaide if you didn't have a bit of toughness about you.
No.
I mean, there's always going to be exception to the rule where you're a really classy player, and that might have been a deficiency in your game. But if you could kick goals and win matches, you'd be a welcome addition to the team. But correct me if I'm wrong, it's probably your best season with Port Adelaide, your last year in the Prism Bar Guernsey.
Oh yeah, I think I was getting, and luckily it was injury free.
Yep.
Similar to '86 was injury free, and '84 was injury free. So those sort of it was all the even years and all the odd years with me. But yeah, like I was confident in I looked after myself in a way that I trained pretty much every day. If there wasn't training at the club, I'd train on my own. I do a lot of sandhill running.
Yep.
Didn't wear myself out, but I was pretty much at peak fitness, and so that was the whole difference with me. If I felt good, well, then I'm usually, going okay. And so 88 was one of those years where I didn't.
One of those years, and of course, beating the Vicks again, third time in a row, and actually thrashing them.
Yeah.
And you get as a result of playing well in that bicentennial carnival, you gain all Australian selection, which would have been a highlight.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, it's funny because I was looking for the tape, that tape I was the other day, and I've actually got quite a few jumpers just in one. And I thought I'd lost the All-Australian one, but I found it because I was looking for the tape.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it's
you
still.
don't have to look for the tape because you just go on YouTube and it'll be there, Marty. But,
Yeah.
No, we'll get a better quality off the tape, but yeah.
Yeah.
But that's when people find all this stuff that they've tucked away, you see, when I come along and go, well,
So, once again, just to cap off the year, Port minor premiers, they win the grand final, and you receive the most McGarry medal votes for Port Adelaide that year. So, yeah, what an awesome year. And
I'm surprised because I used to give the umpires a lot of stick.
And you're a backman too, so they don't usually Centerman's award. But
I tell them exactly what I'd think, and the good part about it was those days, the umpires would tell you to shut the fuck up and stand them up.
Yeah. Yep.
And so you go, okay, well, I've got my stuff out, you've got yours out.
Yep.
Play on. I wish it was like that today, because I can't stand watching footy when, with that Harris Andrews at the start of last year, the commentator said, guy from fullback from Brisbane, commentator said, oh, that's not a free, Harris Andrew gets up, and all he does is this.
And then it's
50. And I've just said, I can't watch this.
They can't say anything.
I just can't watch that because it's just like, it's not football.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
Umpires are just got to be able to say, stand the mark and shut up.
Yeah, the umpires are getting paid damn good money, and they probably need to be a bit more thick-skinned than what they are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone's not very thick-skinned these days, aren't they?
No, that is on the mark, Marty.
Yeah. But I know you say that you probably, if you had your time, well, you would have liked to have gone to the AFL a little bit, like probably a couple of years earlier.
Yeah.
But as it turned out with injury and whatever, anyway, so...
What was it like at Brisbane at that stage, because you were training at a temporary base, was it?
When I left Darwin in '86, I went back and I was at their first ever training in Brisbane.
Yep.
But no, we were training at Carrara when I moved there. Yeah. So, but the club rooms and our change rooms were very temporary, like old classrooms. They've moved in there. And it was pretty archaic, from what you expect from a club. But they only knew they were privately owned. So many different things that it was. I remember, well, my first year there, my shoulder. I was out for 8 or 10, whatever, and because that's why I remember I used to wear the shoulder guard.
Yeah.
And so when I went to Brisbane, I couldn't wear it. It was too bloody hot. So I ended up just stuffing my shoulder up again. So, but I ended up just going to a luncheon. The boys were playing Footscray, I think it was, or back in Footscray then. And so I'm seated down, and Dad had been over for a week, so I said, "Oh, come to the luncheon." And so there's all these, Reg Livermore's, all these, because they're all it's Hollywood,
Yeah, pretty much.
So we're sitting down. They've got 6 bottles of Moe at this table, and there's only 3 of us sitting there. Like me. Me and Dad are sitting there. He said, Jesus Christ. There was a few people there, but not so many on our table. And I've noticed that the game started, so I'm straight out there watching the game, and no one else did.
No,
me and Dad did. Yeah, and everyone else is getting smashed. And they were the hierarchy of the club. It was just different.
Was the money great?
Oh, the money was okay compared to some poor bastards that were up there at the time. Yeah.
Even in the AFL at that time?
Well, yeah.
There would have been no base pay or salary back then, would there?
We had kids, a lot of them, just say a Sean Hart came from, I think Sean came from Shepparton Way.
Yep.
Right? But they used to recruit a lot of young Victorians, they just try to pick because we had extra players on our list because of, we were brand new type of thing.
Yep, trying to kickstart you.
And so I remember there were 6 or 7 of them living in one house. They were getting their rent paid, but they were on $7 grand.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know that at the time, and I used to go around there and You know, they were eating baked beans and cans of spaghetti. And you wonder why Sean was about the only one out of all those kids who ended up, you know, coming good. He ended up, you know, meeting a girl, moving him, you know, he got solid, you know, up there so he could live a decent sort of lifestyle. But some of those kids, there's no way they were going to play AFL because they just didn't have the background. You know, they weren't living in the right circumstances either. So.
Whereas Port Adelaide famous, you boarded the young players from Eyre Peninsula with families and stuff, didn't they?
They did, as far as I know, yeah. Yeah, they were all boarded out and, you know, people used to look after them type of thing. So, yeah.
88, you're always going to go, like there was no...
I think I had to.
Yep.
Just for me.
Yeah, 26.
Just thinking that I felt comfortable playing State of Origin footy, and I'm thinking I want to do that every week.
Yeah,
well,
against
I
the
want
best.
to play against the best players.
Ashenko robbed of the ball by Monkhorst. Getting the kick away is Shaw, down towards half forward. Leslie, who's played a fine game, takes the mark.
I know that the SAFL competition was still good, but just want a new challenge, I suppose. And the whole thing about it is when I do have had sports talks and stuff like that, I do mention, you know, I used to laugh at, you know, my ex-wife used to have a laugh and wake up and there were 6 Saturday mornings or whatever we played, you know, where I stood when I was down in Gary Ablett Senior, and then there was Brereton, then I stood Wayne Carey, then I stood Terry Danaher, then I stood Stuart Lowe, and then
buckets Lowe.
Barry Stoneham, or, you know what I mean, like
the best.
Like, and, you know, as I've always said, you know, didn't need an alarm clock to wake up on Saturday morning, you know, like, yeah. But that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to go, okay, she's on.
Yeah.
You know, and it was just good to be able to play against the best.
Yeah. John Cale was quoted as saying, this is probably at their you know, your Port Adelaide Premiership celebrations or the wind-up or whatever you like to call it, but quoted as saying, speaking purely as an individual, I would hate to see us lose Jono and Marty. Well, he's referring to Russell Johnson, who was being wooed by Collingwood at the time, but he ended up staying at Port Adelaide. He said, having said that, those two guys have exemplified what the Port Adelaide Football Club is about. They are the quintessence of our style. Week after week, they have given body and soul. I hope they don't go, but if they do, good luck and bloody well done, guys. So that would...
I never heard that. So that's nice.
Just a quote out. I think it was John Wood's book. But yeah, he knew that you were probably going to go, but wished you well when you went. So
you are a Port Adelaide boy.
I am.
Taparoo High.
Taparoo High. Lived at born in Semaphore and lived at Largs Bay and Largs North and went to Taparoo. Yeah, so you know, I was going to the footy with Mum and my 2 sisters when I was 5. You know, 1967. So watched us get nailed by Sturt a few times.
In their golden reign.
Then North Adelaide.
North Adelaide in the early 70s.
I remember going to the 71 second semi and the 71 grand final and the 72 second semi and the 72 grand final, and best player for North was B. Robin.
Yeah. Robin versus Ebert. What a duel.
Yeah. So Barry and Russell, it's, you know, just remember one of my greatest accolades was coming off the game in '88 when we beat Victoria. And Barry Robbins said to me, and I remember thinking afterwards, I wish I had that on tape. He said, "That's the best backman's game I've ever seen."
Wow.
And I said to him, "Oh, really?"
Coming from the best.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, that's nice. Yeah.
Getting picked up from Ethelton by Port Adelaide, how'd that happen?
Just natural. I was playing in, you know, under 13s. You know, I was, you know, played state footy in under, you know, Sapsaza. It's under 16 state footy. I was all Australian then, and Till Cup, where probably Bruce Abernathy was probably our best player on that carnival, but didn't even make the All-Australian side. There was about 6 players who made All-Australian from South Australia because we won the carnival, beat the Vicks by 10 goals. Wow. And Bruce didn't even make All-Australian. So I didn't play that well over there, but it was just a natural progression. You know, you're sort of going from, they've just invited you, basically, Derek. They just write you a letter and say, if you want to, you're required at Albion Oval on January or whenever we started training.
Big numbers out there when you got there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because they were famously competitive. They were big groups. I think that Sean Wren's dad Peter tells the story that they went to Westies because they went out to Port Adelaide and there was twice as many lads out there as what Westies had. And so
right.
You've got a better chance of getting a kick here, I think is Peter's quote, but go on.
Yeah. No, I remember I was going through a transition then because I'd sort of played at Ethelton, and even though I'd won a couple of association awards and there was 14 teams in the comp those days. I remember Taparoo had 4 teams in one grade.
Wow.
So going to Taparoo High School, there was 1,600 kids there, and there was about 700 at the Taparoo Primary School. Now, if you go there now, the primary school and the high school are combined, and they've got about 500 kids there.
Downsized,
so
remember.
there was kids everywhere. And
well, that was pre-containerisation probably, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, and so, I didn't think, I wasn't a hard player at all. I was obviously could get the ball, and because I was always had a ball in my hand. But I had to at Port Adelaide turn in. I had to do something extra because the way I thought, I wanted to have something in my game where they've got to pick me.
Yep.
So I worked on that, and it was pretty much just like the courage side of it, and being a little bit hard and having a bit of poo in me.
You ever hit anyone or just ball and all?
I remember.
We can talk about that a bit later when we talk about Dermy Burton, perhaps, mate.
Yeah. Well, I remember being in the under-17 side, and we had some pretty hard nuts in that team. And I was just thinking, oh, gee, they're sort of ooh. And I'm thinking, I need to harden up, And I remember being we went for a trip mid-season where it was a bye. The state team was playing. We went and played the Combined Air Peninsula at Woodner. And I thought, right, I'm just going to harden up. And I actually tried to run through this big country bumpkin, and he knocked me out. And I got carried off. I can't remember how, but I just ran in. I had no idea how to protect myself. No idea. We weren't shown or whatever those days. I just ran into it. Bang.
Because he's just turned and
and cleaned me up. But I think just by doing that, I just thought, oh well, you didn't kill yourself, And so I just had to sort of develop something in my game. So I used to live with Ted Whelan's son, because Ted and they only lived just around the corner from us at Largs North.
Yep.
So Colin was an old mate of mine, and I said to Cole, I went over his place and I said to Ted, Ted was there, he played in 8 flags for Port, and I said, well, what do you reckon I should do? Because Greg Phillips had just left. They went to Collingwood, and I said, I'm going to be centre half back. So what do you, because he was centre half back, Ted was. So what do you reckon? What's the number one bloody thing you can tell me? He said, look after the small blokes. I was gone, okay. And so I developed that. I became a little bit of not nasty.
But a general threat.
Leslie and Michael Annie, Port Adelaide into an open goal.
But I realised if I actually had a bit of a tussle with someone early in the game, I just played way better.
Yep. Got the juices flowing.
I had this more steeliness in me if I could upset someone. And not that I try to do it in a dirty way, but
Just have a presence.
But that brings us to Dermot Brereton.
What's
that story?
So that was an estate game, wasn't it, Marty? And I think Dermy started, I think it might have been the 88 Carnival. Dermy started on the bench. So I think you were opposed to Stephen Silvani at fullback.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I think it's centre half back.
Centre half back. And then...
no, well, you might be right.
Yeah. Anyway, so Dermy's injected into the game and you were sent to him to look after him, and there might have been an altercation pretty early, and probably wasn't all caught on camera, but
Well, I was expecting him to be on at some stage, and I didn't expect us to be about 7 or 8 goals in front at the time either. So, but, that always said to me, if someone whacks you, you just get them back as soon as you can. you know, and so, you know, I don't think I was overly, you know, nasty sort of player, but I, you know, if there was shit going on, I used to have a lot of one-on, you know, toe-to-toes with blokes.
Yep.
I wasn't, but at least they were looking at me. You know what I mean? I didn't, I wasn't sort of a hatchet man who'd come in when they're not looking. But, well, Dermy, straight away, you know, basically sort of tried to rough me up a little bit. And, but that sort of, for me, was what I liked.
Yep.
You know, I mean, I thought, oh, it just sort of stilled me up a little bit. But we had the main blue in the third quarter. He went for a mark, and yeah, I did give him one behind the ear, and he wasn't happy. And the ball sort of went the other way, and I remember him screaming out to me for about 40 minutes, you're fucking dead. So as he walked towards me, he, you know, and got that close, he headbutted me. So then I just, I think I uppercutted him about 6 times.
Yep.
And they all found the mark.
All connected.
And then, you know, the stacks on the mill, you know, that sort of stuff. But
yeah,
you know, Tony Hall was telling me, he said afterwards, because he was playing with Dermy at the time, he said, oh, Jesus, man. I said, you did well because he hits the bag, you know, like he, you know, I said, yeah, you know, like I did a lot of boxing. I didn't want to get in the ring, but I did a lot of boxing training.
Yep.
I just thought it was a really good fitness thing, you know, like on the speed ball and bouncing around, hitting the bag, skipping, that sort of stuff. So, you know, a few of us at Port, David Hines was the same, he got into that a fair bit, and, you know, it was just a good training way to keep fit.
Moving forward, you do eventually go to the Brisbane Bears in '89, and your first game, your debut game, was round 1 versus St Kilda at Moorabbin, of all places. Probably if it was wet back then, it wouldn't have been a very nice, well, probably great for a backman. And do you any recollections of that game and who you stood?
Yeah, well, Tony Lockett.
Tony Lockett, yep.
Yeah, and Peter Knights was a big rap for me. Yeah, so I remember splitting my webbing in my hand during that, it was like the Monday of that week. So I remember, and it was just pretty nasty, you know, where you go in and tackle one of your teammates and your hand goes like that. And it was like everybody went, it's like a rag ripped. And I've just gone, oh, fuck, Jesus.
Yeah, there's a bit of a gaping hole there. And
pouring out type of thing. And so I'm wearing a golf club, glove. You know,
to hold it together.
Hold it together. But, you know, it didn't make much difference. So the whole thing is that St Kilda kicked 24 goals that day. And bring it back later, it's all good. And yeah, we got smashed. So I remember Tony took a big mark on me in the first quarter. I've got to say I wasn't a fullback anyway. I was not, you know, the funny part about me as a footballer, I never felt overly comfortable playing fullback because I think, you know, even though over the years I actually got better, but my first 10 metres wasn't lightning. Yeah. So I was a lot.
Your legs are too long, probably. Yeah.
A lot more comfortable sort of on the half-back line, you know. But Knights, he wanted me to play on Lockett. So yeah, we kicked 6 on me up till about just early into the last quarter, and then he ended up kicking 9. But they kicked 24, and they killed us. I think we only kicked about 12 or 13 goals. I can't even remember.
Yep.
And there's a little story about that because. It was very much, when I got to Brisbane, there was very much Victoria, and there's South Australians, and there's some Queenslanders and Western Australians, you know, and Victorians are always, you know, reasonably cocky, you know, the average Victorian. And I remember one of the trainers said to me, he said, Marty, he said, I know it was a tough day out there, but he said, I heard some of the hierarchy, they're going, you know, he's only a South Australian anyway, and so he said, next week, buddy, Lockett's standing Silvani. So, you know, Silvani, you know, he'll keep him, you know, and so Silvani got 12 goals, 7 kicked on him. Right.
So the South Australian wasn't too bad after all.
And the whole thing is, I was actually disappointed. I'm thinking, all right, it's my first ever, AFL game type of thing, and there was, I don't know, that's just typical of the culture we had, I think as well, and the culture got better over the years at Brisbane, but it was flimsy, early.
Oh, no history.
No history, and but that first game was a tough one, and the funny part, he took a big mark on me in the first quarter, I think, and Jesus, he was not an easy player to stand. He was, there was once we played at Moorabbin again, and he had 9 goals at half time on Lersey, who was standing him, and I was on Stuart Lowe.
Yep.
And I had to go back on him, and he only kicked 1 in the second half. But he kicked his 10th on me, and that was like, that was, it's on the TV, and I'm like,
Yeah, no, Martin's been standing him all day. So, it was pretty tough yards being at Brisbane Bears in those days, like 89 when you first went there, not too bad, 8 wins. Then progressively, like the following year, 4 wins, you finished bottom in 91. Second bottom, the 4 wins in 92, and 93, 4 wins again. So then, come 94, start to work their way up until your last year when you lost the qualifying final. Did you play in that game, or you were injured by then? And
I only played 4 games that year.
4 games that year.
It was, I was just, I was running out of petrol.
Yep.
Yeah, so, that was the time when the back was struggling, and I remember just trying to even pick up the ball from training. It was just starting to, I had 4 epidurals in my back in 95.
Yep.
And they lasted for a little bit of time, but it was just hard work.
So
I couldn't wait to retire. When I did, I actually took this bottle of champagne home, said to the missus, I said, that's it.
That's it.
And I'm, just sick of myself, really. I've always been, being in ice or, that sort of stuff, and it was good,
Yeah, well, that would put a line through one of my questions I had for you. Was there any overtures from Port Adelaide to return to the SANFL, and your body was gone? And
they rang me at the end of my career, and they were sort of thinking about coach, wanting to come back and maybe coach the Port, which Stephen Williams ended up doing because they knew they were going to go into the league.
Yep, Johnny Cole halfway through the year.
And I thought about it, but I've got to say, because I ended up not going near a footy ground much for 8 years. I did go down to Brisbane's training every now and then just to say good day.
Wing to the open spaces. Kennedy traps it first, gets around Russell. South Australian Leslie, Bain. The interstate is combining well. Leslie again long, down towards half forward. Merritt in front. Tries to charge through Krasiska. Williams takes the hand pass. Umbers, short kick. No one's down there. Hardy propping, looking for the free again. Shovelled out to Williams. Opportunity here for the Bears. Solomon, can he get the goal? He can. It looks good. The umpire says all clear.
But I was over it, and I never, I retired in John Northey was coaching Brisbane because Wolsey finished the same year I did.
Yes.
And then Northey wanted me to be assistant coach, and I was over it.
Yep.
And then Roger Merritt was coaching for a little bit, and he wanted me to be assistant coach, and I just. And I was, 8 years out of the game, and it was good, for me. My kids were growing up, and I was just Mr. Normal Joe Blow.
Yeah.
And I never really wanted to be, walking around. I'm Martin Leslie. It was just not me. You know what I mean? I just like to, cruise around and
be a normal person,
not be treated as an oddity. But which probably brings us to you did get back into footy. When was that, and who with?
I got back to South Australia. See, I had a marriage breakup in the early 2000s, and which is the reason I'm here, because I ended up following my kids here in 2006, and I was I was coming back and forth. So I was living in Brisbane there for a while, and then I moved to Sydney. And I flew, the last year I was at Qantas, I flew 42 times in the 52 weeks because you could get on standby and it doesn't cost you a lot.
I had a question, Marty, about an incident when you're at the Bears. Involves Robert Walls, where a footballer by the name of Shane Stremple, Wallsy thought he needed to be taught a lesson or some respect. Thrown in a ring with similar type guys around him. I don't know whether you were one, but he basically had to go rounds, taking turns, the boxing.
Yeah.
Until such time as I think it was Brad Hardy or somebody said, look, you've got to stop this. This is getting out of control and very dangerous for the guy's health. So, do you recall that incident? And
yeah, I do. We had no idea what was going to happen. And we had one area of the ground in those days that they didn't turn the light on in one sort of pocket, where we trained in sort of 3/4 of the oval.
Yep.
And that's where we end up going over to. So we finished training on this one night, and he said, I want to go get the boxing gloves to the trainers and whatever, and meet us over the other side. So he got us all to stand in a big circle, and he just said to Shane Stremple, he said, righto, Stremps, this is why you're in the middle. He said, because he was, he wasn't being professional. Like he was, I remember sort of seeing him play reserves, and I was in the race, and they came in at half time, and you could smell alcohol on him. And, so he was Jack the Lad type of thing.
Yep.
And thought he was pretty flash hot, and so Wolsey, he didn't like it. So Stremple had to put the gloves on, and then they got the 6 guys who were probably. They did lighter training, but their lighter training was a lot of boxing.
Yep.
So it was Alex Yashenko, I think, Phil Walsh, Brad Hardy, Cameron O'Brien,
big boy,
big beefcake.
Yeah.
Matt Kennedy.
Yep.
Who ended up being a pretty good footballer, at centre half back. So I had these guys, and I just belted the crap out of him basically. And he started off not too bad.
Yeah, well, apparently he could actually box himself, but when well, by all reports, he had even trouble just holding his arms up after going 3 or 4 rounds with 3 or 4 different guys.
Yeah. These days, Wolsey's been in all sorts of trouble.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So, I remember Phil Walsh sitting in there. He was like little, Jack Russell.
Yeah.
Bang, 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 bang. And because Walshy didn't mind the boxing. Yeah. So I'm glad I didn't get called over.
Yeah.
Because and Brad Hardy was right, because Brad was a properly trained boxer.
Yep.
And he said, no, because he was like the 6th person or something to be called in, and Wolsey said, no, get in there. He said, no, I'm not.
Yep.
It's too dangerous, and I think, once you sort of, you're probably doing something like that, it's pretty hard to pull punches. You're either doing it or you don't, so, it wasn't a great memory.
No.
But, and the thing is, he didn't learn about it. He didn't learn from it either.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so he got sacked probably, a month later, and Kevin Sheedy said in the papers, we'll have him, and we'll make something out of him. No,
never did.
No, never did. So, he was always on a one-way ticket to nowhere, I think.
Yep. One other question at your time at the Bears, Warwick Kappa.
Yeah.
Was he as mad as he portrayed himself, or was it part of a charade? Or, I mean, the guy could obviously play, and his record suggests so, but
he just couldn't kick. But sorry, go on.
Yeah. Well, it made it harder for him at Carrara compared to Sydney.
Bit more limelight.
It was a pretty big ground. So what I'm talking about is his length of his kicks, possibly, and he had to lead out at Carrara, and he wasn't as much of a leader as he was, the high flyer. So he had a lot of talent, and but also too, there was a lot of animosity there. It was the time where you had Mike Richardson was there playing with us as well,
getting big dollars.
Yeah, whether he's getting big, I'm not too sure what sort of money he was, but Capel was definitely probably on the most, I'd say.
Yep.
And he wasn't really performing. And then a bit of animosity between like Mike Richardson and Capel. They were two similar sort of people. You know,
Yeah.
loved the limelight, that sort of stuff. And they hated each other's guts. Yeah. And I remember going into the, after a game, and the trainers who I used to sit with and have a beer after the game, and they're always decent guys, they said, you know, they're not kicking the Caps, Marty, you know, you're not kicking to him. And I just said, no, that wouldn't happen. You know, and it was happening, because I ended up talking to Richo about it. He said, I don't kick to that prick. Playing on the, so I'm just thinking, this is ridiculous. You know, there's blokes busting their arse out there, only, you know, like, not everybody, but, and then that's happening in your own team.
Yeah, you need to put the personalities aside and play as a team.
Well, yeah. You know, I mean, there's blokes I probably didn't like too much in my team, you know, at times. But you
for the betterment of the side, you got to.
That's all gone.
Yeah.
They've got the same Guernsey on as you do.
Yep.
And then you're playing 100% for them. And that's the way it is, you know. It's, you know, it's a bit like that's why I loved footy so much, because, you know, I used to go back to that cartoon, the coyote and the sheepdog.
Yep.
You know, Ralph and Sam. Well, you know, it's a Bugs Bunny type, I think.
Yeah.
And they'd clock into work. Hey, Ralph, g'day, Sam. You know, then they'd blow the horn, you know, start work, and they'd just bash the shit out of each other. You know, I love that.
Yeah.
You know, you get a reason to bash the shit out of
But what happens on the field?
Yeah.
It's a good analogy for sure.
Yeah.
Yuri Yukta, you mentioned, so when you did get back into football, that was your first coaching gig?
Yeah.
2004, 2005?
And I was pretty raw. It's funny because, you know, you do feel like you've been away from it from a long time. And probably took me a good 6 months to actually, you know, get a bit of an act.
Yep.
And, but I thought that, I thought I had a bit to offer. And obviously I still was pretty keen to come back here.
Yep.
You know, because I was still travelling all the time, you know, seeing the kids. So I spent 2 years at Newry, and I just basically said to them, you know, they wanted me to stay, but, you know, I was just missing the kids too much. And so I ended up coming back here, went to coach in Lanna, which I really enjoyed. They were all a real young bunch at the time.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, so you're there 2006, 2007.
Yeah.
And when I mentioned these names, like the Jolly Boys, the Crittenden brothers, the Watsons, the Casey Cars, Ricky Skinner, Jackson Nord, do you feel that, you know, in a way, I mean, they were a young developing team and, you know, probably struggling then. Do you feel that in some way that's your legacy, that you did have a chance to coach those young boys and look at them now like... Thanks, Jacko. We're just watching the start of the A-grade match here, and it promises to be a pretty close affair. I mean, Lanna are the top dogs of the league, have been for a number of years, but there's Bryce Breed's going to get what will probably be the last shot on goal for Lanna. Kicked a lot of goals in his career, Brycey Breed. Been a good player for the Eagles for a long time. Generally a beautiful kick, and that's no exception. Straight through the middle.
Yeah, well, back when I was coaching them, I noticed a couple of things, you know, which I couldn't handle, you know, because I've sort of came from a sort of professional background.
Yep, so the cultural side of...
Yeah, well, I remember we rolled up to play Kapini there one day, and this guy was, we had to, you know, bring another player in from the reserves, and he was a good bloke, I didn't mind him. And but he said to me, because it was a wet day, you know, and we're talking before the game, and he said, he came up to me and said, "Oh, Marty, you know, like if I stay on the bench all day, that'd be really good." And we ended up going down that day, not by much, and I just let him have it in front of everybody. I said, if you were playing for Ramblers, right, you wouldn't even get in the front fucking door. You know, like, there's the last thing an A-grade coach wants to hear is one of his players wants to be on the bench all day. I said, you know, if you're going to have that, you know, that sort of look or outlook on footy.
What are you here for?
I said, we've got no show. We've got no show. You know, and funnily enough, we went out and beat Ramblers for the first time next week. First time for 10 years, I think it was. You know, so, you know, I was more about ethic, when I was coaching. You know, I wasn't. I wouldn't say my weakness of coaching was probably impatience, expecting too much.
Yep.
And also probably not being a great. Didn't look into the opposition as much as I should have, or I maybe should have got the people, you know, to do that.
Do the homework. Yep.
But I think I had a few holes, but I mean, you know, the passion was always there.
Yep.
Until I finished, because the reason I stopped coaching A grade is that there was no passion left. You know, and even now with so I coached the kids for 10 years at Boston's, and because the passion was there.
Yep.
And if they asked me to do it again, I'd say no, because it isn't there. You know, so you can't generate passion if there's no fire there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So.
But you mentioned the Boston's Juniors, which is a great setup.
Yeah.
There'll be Bodie Fowler again. Good grab, well done, fella. Just going to pass it off. Good kick. Found Liam Hawke, no worries. Although, being a defender, nothing's guaranteed. That's a good goal from a defender. He's had a great game. That was a really good kick from Ashley, a really good mark and kick from Ashley Durden too. And in fact, the great hope for the club, I guess.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, you know, we said, you know, a lot of times we can't seem to keep them there. So hopefully that the group that they've, you know, that's come through now on the 15s and 17s are going to, you know, sort of hang around. So we've got one fella going to Norwood, you know, going to be playing. Ollie's going to be playing at Norwood, or hopefully this year. And
Jordanson.
Good kick, good clearing kick out of defence to Robertson. Robertson looks inside. Fowles had quite a bit of the ball this quarter. Kicks it into the forward 50. Ollie Sellen will take the mark. He's got Will Smith open in the goal square. He gets it on quick to him.
Beautiful kick.
Will Smith will take his time here, go back and should kick it through, and he does.
Just using the footy a little bit better, I reckon, Keisty, the Tigers.
You know, and he's been a great success. You know, I did a lot of one-on-one with Ollie. His father got me to, because I do we used to do a lot of sprint training. So I was taught, because I was a little bit slow, and so I was sent out to always trying to think of names, and you know, I can see faces. But I was sent out to a fellow with a few players in the early 80s, and he taught us how to run.
Yep.
And I did that on my own so much throughout my career, and it got me adequate. You know, like if I'm standing, say, a Gary Ablett at fullback, I'm thinking, because he had a motor, like he could sprint really fast.
Those first 5, yeah.
Yeah, but most players I could at least have touch on. Yep. You know what I mean? And so I used to do a lot of that with Ollie. And you know, he really, you know, liked it. Same with Chook Fowler's kids, his Bodie as well.
Well, to be a part of this year, and although we lost the grand final yesterday,
you made the grand.
Yeah, we made it. That's what I was about to say. We made it, and we weren't supposed to, apparently, but you know, had to show Lincoln what we're about, because yeah.
Boston's going forward. Ollie
Good grab. This bloke can play.
Yes, he can. Also got selected in the EP side, I believe.
Yeah, I believe he played a terrific game up at, where is it, Cleve?
Yep.
Player of the Carnival, I think.
But apart from, you know, teaching them how to sprint, there's also a little bit about attitude, and you know, how much you're going to have to, if you want to make it, you're going to have to do more work than anyone else.
Yeah, and your preparation before a game, and
they've started winning. Oh, he's dragged down. That is brilliant, desperate defence from Boston's, and that's what wins football games. Well, at junior level.
Yeah.
But even in the A grade, they were not great 2 years ago. Last year, they came close. It certainly was a big improvement.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's going to be hard yards for the coach down there. You know, like it's.
It's a good segue into probably my last question about coaching and in your time right through from under 17s to your last year at AFL level, coaches Malcolm Maiden, Tony Hobby, Brian Fairclough, Johnny Cale, of course, Russell Leavitt, Peter Knights, who was sacked halfway through your first season. Paul Thelfin, who took over that year, Norm Dare and Robert Walls lastly. So any of you sort of like through your coaching, if you're taking little bits from each coach and probably who was the most respected coach that you had in that time?
Oh, all right. Yeah, gee,
Came behind the pack to Rowe, untidy hand pass, Leslie. Good hand pass, that one to Gastev. He runs to centre wing, kicks towards right half forward.
I used to look and watch people. So, like when I first started at Port, the guys I used to sort of just, I didn't have to ask any questions.
Yep.
You know how you go up and say, if I was coaching your ladder and you'd get one ladder to come up and say, what do you think I should do here? Well, I don't mind giving them an answer, but I'm thinking you probably don't need to ask.
Yep.
You've got to watch.
Yep.
Who's the best player in the team?
See what they do.
He would say, so-and-so. I said, well, watch what he does.
Watch what he does and how he goes about
his training, how he goes about his preparation, that sort of stuff. And then you don't have to ask me.
Yep.
And that's the whole thing. And so as Brian Cunningham, we had, John Carl, Russell Leavitt, and all these players who were fair. Tony Giles was one of my favourite players.
Yeah, half-back flanker.
Yeah, because Tony was like, he didn't have all the skill. Jesus, like when it was on, and I loved his attitude, He was also a pretty funny sort of dude, He'd say, you got a girl, Marty? I've gone, oh no, but you getting a bit? Yeah, that's good. and I say, you having a beer? Yeah, you got to drink beer. Drink beer, get a root.
Life couldn't be better. Last couple, I can't finish without talking about these two guys because they were favourites of mine, but probably hated by the opposition. That's David Granger and Bomber Clifford.
Yeah,
a couple of colourful characters.
Yeah, I just feel with David, I think he had, I knew him pretty well, and when I was living in Brisbane, and also, I came back and lived at Newry. If I come back to Adelaide, I always bob in and see him, and he didn't have too many people that would do that. Russell was another one who did. But I think even in his younger days, I think David would admit that he probably, had a few dramas. Like I don't think his father spoke to him. He came back from the Vietnam from the Second World War, and didn't speak to the family for 10 years. And I think there was a lot of dramas in that. And I think his brother John, grew up in a similar sort of atmosphere. And so David, I remember standing David. This is a good true story. I was 17, and it was 1980, and we played an internal trial at Riverside Oval. And John Cale said to me, he said, right, you're going to be on Granger. And I was, sort of, oof. But I thought good, because if I can actually, do something out there, well, he's the number one centre forward at the moment. So anyway, ball was bounced for the first time, like in the middle of the game at the ground. So, very first start of the first quarter, and I just did the typical what I always did. I'd just put my arm across and just make sure I've got touch on him.
Yep.
Kabang! Just dropped me like a hot scone. So split my nose, split my lip, and I've got up and I said, what the fuck are you doing? Like, we're both in the same team. He said, just shut the fuck up and play the game, you little...
Yeah, right.
And I've just gone, Jesus Christ. So Mick Hamill's come over, and he was a copper, and he was about 6'4". And he said, hey, what are you doing? And Granger's gone up to me and said, why don't you piss off, otherwise I'll just pull it out. You know? And, I thought, oh, it's just going to be on the day. So I ended up doing okay on him, and after the game, he bought me a beer, but I walked into the club rooms and he said, "That's for you, Marsha." I said, "My name's Marty, not Marsha." He said, "No, Marsha Hines, look at your fucking lip." Right? So, but David and I always got on pretty well. But I was in the rooms when at 3, because I had a broken cheekbone from the second semi-final. We played Glenelg in 1982 when he whacked Cornsey, came on and whacked Cornsey. And I was in the rooms, and I did hear John Cale say, "When you get on, let yourself go." And he'd never said that before.
Yeah, right.
And, I don't want to sort of be out there, dobbing people in, but I don't think it was Jack's idea, but he might have been told to say that.
Yeah, okay.
By someone a bit higher up.
Right, yep.
But when he said, "David, when you get on," and I know exactly what the words were, because other people have said, no, I said, no, that's not what he said. I said to them, and I remember being in there, in the rooms, because I just went, "Oh, you don't need any encouragement, David."
No.
And let yourself go. That was the word, the way he said it.
How he interpreted it? Well, we know what happened.
And I went upstairs because Clifford was not playing either, Bomber. And I said to Bomber, because it was after half time, so I thought I might have a beer. And Bomber was there. I said, "I'm not going to tell you anything yet. Just wait until Granger gets on." He said, "What was that?" I said, "Oh, just wait." So when he's come and dropped, see when he whacked Cornsey, he didn't hit him properly. He was there, because he just went like that.
Yep.
And Cornsey got straight up. Yep. And he got 8 games for that. I'm thinking, if you're going to get 8 games,
make it worth your while.
Make it worth your while. And that was his last ever game.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and Bomber, Bomber is. We speak on the phone probably once every few weeks, and he's been around here and stayed, and he was the life of the party. Yeah. And one of the funniest blokes you'd meet. Sometimes they went overboard. Some of those jokes have been overboard, but just good times, back in those days. Very good footballer.
Oh, great player. I think 3-time best and fairest.
3-time best and fairest, and just knew how to find the ball. But he's
incredible ball finder.
Yeah, really, really good. And he'd come into the showers after the game, and we'd all having a bit of a laugh if we won a game. He said, "Yeah. Well, how'd you go, Marty?" I said, "I don't know. How many kicks you got?" I had no idea. He says, 16 kicks, 15 handballs, 14 marks. Stick that up your fucking ass.
Basic.
Yeah. And that was pretty much, Bomber all over.
Yeah.
He went up to see, he was at Nord one night, and went up to Michael Ace and said, "Acey, buddy, how you going, mate? Buddy, good to see you." He said, "You know what? You were one of the best footballers I've ever seen. Problem is, I was just a shade better."
And that's what footy's really about. On that note, we say,
all right.
Marty, thanks very much. You're a ledge.
All right. All good.
Sign that for us, please, Martin.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, yeah. No worries. Poor old Anthony there.
Yeah.
Sorry, mate. Just giving you like a knee in the back.
Yeah, exactly. And while you're at it, you might as well sign that one too. That's signed by the Williams family, but I don't mind if you...
Yep.
But yeah.
No worries. No, it was all good fun, guys. And
Fantastic, thanks very much.
Yeah, I was a very lucky person, played in a great era.
It was a great era, wasn't it?
Yeah.